was a monk by the name of Seurat who went from Majorca to California and set up 13 monasteries. Attached to these monasteries, he planted vineyards. A vineyard is the source of grapes. Grapes are the source of wine. Wine is the source of vinegar. Vinegar is the source of acetone. Acetone blows up sufficiently to light the coal seams. Acetone is the igniter used by nature to cause a volcano to explode. Usually on a mountain, you have a lake. Underneath, you have lava. You need something between the two that will cause the explosion. It's a little bit like New York City, Manhattan. Underneath Manhattan is a set of steam pipes. Steam pipes provide helpful service by bringing heat and energy to different buildings in Manhattan. However, steam pipes are basically a bomb waiting to happen. And we saw it happen in one of the streets of New York a couple of years ago when in the middle of the street there was an explosion that went up to the third or fourth floors of the buildings around it. That's because when you superheat pipe with steam on the inside, as long as it's protected by earth, you don't have a problem. But if there is a sudden amount of water, cold water, that seeps through the earth, as you would get from a tsunami or as you would get from month-long rain, when the water from the surface touches the steam pipe, you get a reaction between hot and cold, which causes an explosion. In Manhattan, at one stage, if it's only one place where it happens, they shut off the steam from the pipes in all directions and then go repair the problem and keep on working. However, were Manhattan to receive a permanent flood of water from the Atlantic Ocean, as would be created by a tsunami, or an explosion from the Titanic that is basically sitting there waiting to do its job. The rear end of the Titanic is made of titanium and is equipped with an explosive device that will induce or enhance a tsunami. It's right against the mid-Atlantic ridge, so it will focus its energy in one direction only, and that is towards the East Coast. Taking out parts of Canada, maritime provinces would be in the line, and then it would be basically hitting all the way down the East Coast with a tsunami, which could bring a wave much higher than most cities are above sea level. And at Providence, Rhode Island, it would circumvent the mountains there, the Appalachian Mountains, because there's kind of a path between them, and pour into the Ohio Valley. So you, in fact, could get water all the way to the Mississippi River, Chicago, and the Mississippi River from this activity on the Atlantic Ocean coming through Providence, Rhode Island. Part of that would also be water coming up the St. Lawrence and destroying Montreal on the way through.
I was talking to a friend of mine, she's telling me she's reading one of your older articles that you made, and you basically said that New Orleans is going to be flooded before it even happened.
Sure.
How did you know that?
Well, it's simple mathematics. It's physics. You don't build a city under sea level and lean it up against a body of water like the Gulf of Mexico, which has vents right at the mouth of the Mississippi from volcanoes down below. So the volcanoes can blow, and that's one way you would get water into New Orleans. But the other thing is, if a hurricane is traveling in a certain direction and would miss New Orleans, if the underwater volcano is heating up the water there, that hurricane will be attracted to it, and it would then go up in that area, which would mean it would cause a storm surge, which is basically what happened in New Orleans. For me, like New York, it's just a matter of time. If you're going to build a city, you don't build it in a way that it's sure to kill people unless you have a reason to do it. And these people who built New Orleans, Lewis and Clark and all of those people who established the territory, had a reason to do it. They knew the plan. They knew that at a certain stage, what they were planning was a laboratory called the United States of America, and its role would be finished, and therefore it would have to be destroyed. So its position had to be plotted on a geology map, basically to guarantee that they could use the forces of nature to destroy it.
I know they have weaponry. I never heard you mention like the hard technology, where you can just create tsunamis and
absolutely. All of the control mechanisms over Mother Nature are in the Indian Ocean. So by being in Antarctica, in front of the Indian Ocean, and the basic passageways have all been built under the ocean, they can basically go to a place like Banda Aceh in Malaysia, like they did in, 2003 or something, and lay a charge on one of their tunnels that would allow the tunnel to break and the water to be sucked in. That's what a tsunami is. A tsunami is basically when the ocean all of a sudden is confronted with the fact that the bottom has fallen out, like a collapse under the sea. It can happen naturally in caverns, or it can happen in mines that have been dug, and it can happen if somebody put a tunnel and attached an explosive. Now, what happens to the seawater is it drops into the hole. Until it fills that cavity, it's going down. So the people on any island or seashore in the neighborhood would see the tide going out, and they'd say, oh, look at that. There's a nice piece of property that didn't exist before, and they start walking out on this, what they believe is low tide. But what they don't realize is when the water has filled the cavity, boom, at the bottom, it bounces up. And from the hole, it spreads out. Now, a tsunami travels under the ocean, under the seawater, but on top of the sediment. And it travels at a speed of jet aircraft, 400 to 500 miles an hour. And depending on how big the hole was, the wave that travels will be that depth changes according to the depth of the hole, because you get more or less water if the hole is bigger or smaller. Many times what you get is a hole that creates a wave under the seawater of 35 feet. Now, 35 feet travels along the floor of the ocean at 500 miles an hour. There is nothing on the surface that makes one know this, because it's all happening at the bottom of the water, until it reaches land. And then, of course, when it reaches land, then it's going 500 miles an hour, and it's 35 feet thick, it goes straight over the land, and anybody that's standing there is going to be drowned by the tsunami. The interesting thing about the word tsunami is that it has, number one, the first two letters are T and S, and a T is a 2 and an S is a 1. So it's about 2 in 1. Then it's about Sioux, and Sioux is a boy called Sioux.
Yeah,
A male, female on the outside, male on the inside. And the final part is ami, which means friends, which means nothing. Pawns, I can get rid of them, disposable. So there you go. The word ami comes from the MOHO discontinuity. The part which is solid is called sima, S-I-M-A.